Hello everyone, this is Aegon of Astora, and welcome back to my casual playthrough of Dark Souls. This is episode 17, and the date of recording is Thursday the 27th of August. I'm having a fantastic day today, and I hope that each and every one of you is as well, whenever it is that you find yourself watching this. So before we got into anything else, I wanted to return to this room because I realized that the one missing piece of evidence was Smough's hammer. The item description for which reads, "Great hammer from the soul of Executioner Smough, who guards the cathedral in the Forsaken city of Anor Londo. Smough loved his work and ground the bones of his victims into his own feed, ruining his hopes of being ranked with the 4 knights. That is the 4 Knights of Gwyn. So with that in mind, with that context, these seem almost certainly to be bones rather than scrolls. And the dirt that I was so puzzled about in the previous episode seems to be the feed that Smough grinds, or that Smough produces by grinding the bones of his victims. So the dirt in this box is the feed in question, and presumably he stacked the bones on top so as to, I guess, add them to his collection later on. So mystery solved. I had to, in order to get our hands on this weapon, I had to upgrade a hammer or great hammer to +10, and then trade it with the giant blacksmith. And I just wanted to comment on, once again, the strange and arbitrary line breaks in some of these item descriptions. Kind of funny that would have gotten by whomever was in charge of going over these things. But yeah, pretty gross. Pretty gross. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about the 4 Knights of Gwyn later on, once we start learning more about who they are, and once we actually get a chance to meet a couple of them. I should also probably mention the segment you just saw on the farming runs I've been doing. I've been doing 2 separate farming runs. The first being so the first one you would have seen was in the depths, farming the rats for humanity. I'm sure that there are more efficient ways of farming humanity pre-Dark Chasm of the Abyss, so that is before going to the DLC. I think potentially that the Painted World of Ariamis, it might be better to farm the rats for humanity there, but I'm not entirely sure. But I do enjoy running around the depths and killing rats. It's weird, but I seem to enjoy it. I find it calming. I can do it without really thinking all that much. And the same goes for the second farming route that you saw, whereby I descend down to the New Londo ruins and just take out all but one of the Dark Race, I believe. The one I generally leave alone is the one that you saw me kill last. And the only reason I actually went after that one was because, as you saw, when I killed the one that was closest to the Valley of the Drakes, I noticed right over my shoulder that there was a vagrant there. Once again, I thought that it was an evil vagrant, or a black phantom evil vagrant. Can't talk today, apparently. But it was just a normal evil vagrant. So one day, perhaps, we'll find a black phantom evil vagrant, but that day, unfortunately, was not today, or more accurately, yesterday, when I actually recorded that video. One day, Aegon. So in addition to being able to level up to level 90 with the souls I've accumulated from the farming runs, being able to replenish ourselves with green blossoms, homeward bones. So yeah, as you can see, I did a lot of farming. Feather arrows all the way up to 999. We also got pretty lucky in terms of our Titanite slab drop rates. So in addition to the one that we got from the Stray Demon in the Northern Undead Asylum upon our return, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, so all of our armor is fully upgraded. We got our longsword to +15, so that's 5 slabs. And there were a couple other things as well. So we used all the slats 5, and then also upgraded... What was it? I think it was our boulder shield. Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't. Okay, so I got 4 slabs to drop, in addition to the one that I got from the Stray Demon. So, not a bad day at the farming office. Not a bad day at all. And we upped... I haven't upped my vitality in quite some time, but that's okay. We're going to see if we can't get everything else that we need to get up first before we bother with the vitality, because now that we have +10 armor, we do take a fair bit more damage than we did before. And we are under the, I believe it was 54, the poise breakpoint, at which most people seem to put their seem to target for their builds, mostly for PvP, but pardon me, my cell phone just rang there. We came here to get dialogue from these two fellas.
Oh, hello again. I was waiting to tell you. Master Logan has returned, and he tells me that he has you to thank. Well, we are both in your debt now. Thank you, sincerely. He's just over there. Go along and have a chat.
I like how he thinks he has to, I guess, give us permission to speak with the person whom we rescued, but...
Oh, hello. I appreciate the attention, but you really should speak to Master Logan. That will certainly do you more good. Have you spoken to Master Logan? He is an accomplished scholar. The arts of sorcery would never have come this far without his contributions. And he has the nerve to go risking life and limb. What a stubborn old fellow. Have you spoken to Master Logan? And he has...
So the Firelink Shrine's resident fanboy, Griggs of Vinheim, sells the Bellowing Dragon Crest ring, a special ring granted to only the most accomplished sorcerers at Vinheim Dragon School. This ring is engraved with an everlasting dragon and boosts the strength of sorceries. So suggesting that Griggs is among the most accomplished sorcerers who graduated presumably from Vinheim Dragon School. And this one says the ring is engraved with a lingering dragon and boosts the... So, I'm not sure if there's any other references in the game to... Because this one specifically mentions Everlasting Dragon. Which, with the scales of immortality, I assume that they all have that. I don't know... What I'm trying to say is that I don't know where there's any other reference to a lingering dragon, and what it is that distinguishes a lingering dragon from an everlasting one. Because I thought all dragons were supposed to be immortal, and that if it wasn't, then it was either Seath or one of the drakes. But yeah.
Goodbye then. Do stay safe.
I'm going to see if we can't get a good view of his face while we're talking to him, but the problem is that there's all this high grass here. So we might have to be peeking at his face through some blades of grass, unless... That's probably as... Oh. It's probably as good as we're going to get it there.
There you are. I was expecting you. As promised, I will share my sorceries.
So we might leave the item descriptions for these until later on, because I do have, once again, a number of comments I want to get to today. So I was under the assumption that we had to purchase his spells to get him to move on, but I'm reasonably certain that he actually moves on his own, and that you don't actually have to purchase his spells until later in his quest line. So we'll just... Oh, he doesn't actually have a talk option. Interesting. Oh well.
Heading out, are you? I too will leave soon. Undead or no, I shan't stay here forever. You have great potential. Don't go and die over nothing.
Well, thank you kindly. Okay, so before I warp to the next destination, so I'm not going to get to any of the comments just yet, but I did have a few things on in my Word document here that I use to keep notes about what it is I want to talk about and wherein I place comments that I want to address. And so first thing is Griggs and Logan. We need to speak with Laurentius to upgrade our Pyromancy Flame to +15. Which I really hesitate to do because he's awesome and he's so nice, but yeah.
Oh, hello there. I'm pleased to see you safe. As always, if you provide the materials, I can teach you pyromancy. A pyromancer's flame is a part of his own body. The flame develops right along with his skill. When I gave you that flame, I gave you a part of myself. Please take good care of him.
Okay, sorry, he's repeating his dialogue. I should have skipped that. So we've already purchased everything from him, and this will be the last thing that, our last transaction with him. So let's see if that unlocks any additional dialogue.
A pyromancer's flame.
No, it doesn't.
Please take. Goodbye then. Come back if you find anything new.
Be safe, friend, and don't you dare go hollow, even though I know you're about to. Well, not just yet. We do have to go down to Blighttown first. Actually, in fact, I do have a comment I want to address here. The context calls for it, and so we must address it. So Aaron commented, there were a few parts of his comment, but I'm only going to address the third one for now, where Aaron says, Kaylana isn't really triggered by anything, I'm pretty sure. I've had her show up when I don't even have the Pyromancy flame. When I have it, but it isn't upgraded. When I have all Firelink Pyromancies, when I have none, it seems so random. The issue there, well, it's not really an issue, but what leads to that randomness, I'll put it like that. What leads to that randomness is that it's not only the host who triggers Kaylana to spawn. Even if, say, if you summon someone who has a Pyromancy flame that is plus 10 or higher, then Kaylana will spawn. Similarly, if you are invaded even by someone who has a Pyromancy flame of plus 10 or higher, she will show up. I believe, once again, I'm not sure about this, but I believe this was another illusory wall investigation and discovery. I will link to the post if I can find it this time, because I couldn't seem to find that one post, which I swear I remember seeing, about being able to kill, or about not being able to kill Kingseeker Framped. I had assumed that it was an illusory wall thing, but when I looked on his blog, on his Tumblr page, I couldn't find anything. And then I did a, YouTube search, couldn't find anything there either. But, and maybe I should have looked on the Dark Souls subreddit. But the problem is, yeah, the Reddit search function is really not very good. But whatever the case, if I can't find the source of it, I will link to the Wikidot page, which I believe has that mentioned on there. That, yeah, to spawn Kaylana, it doesn't even need to be you who has the plus 10 Pyromancy flame. If you're invaded or you summon someone who has a plus 10 or higher Pyromancy flame, then Kaylana will spawn. I presume that that's not how they meant to implement that mechanic, but that's what happened. So, okay, so next on my list, I wanted to talk about, because, I'm a few days away from starting a new academic year, and it's part of the reason, as I've alluded to in previous episodes, why I'm pumping out so many videos now. In the last week or two, I think I've released a video just about every day. And the reason for that is simply that I won't have as much time when the academic year starts to release nearly as much content as I am now. I am still going to be releasing about, I'm going to be trying to release one episode of Bloodborne Let's Talk Lore a week, but this series I'm hoping to wrap up or be close to wrapping up by the time the year starts. I don't know the exact date offhand, but it's sometime next week. So I wanted to gauge the interests of everyone watching in my potentially doing some live streaming. I do have, and I have had for quite some time, a Twitch account, which is simply Aegon_of_Astora. And I can't stream, like I can stream from the 360 using OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, but I get, my computer's not very good. I get something like 15-20 frames per second when doing that. So the only option really is streaming via the built-in function on the PlayStation 4. I think it's PlayStation Live or something like that. And while I have done a couple of test live streams using the PlayStation 4 streaming service, I believe I streamed Bloodborne, I've never been, like, I like Twitch sometimes, but it makes a little bit less sense to me to kind of, there's a small community of us, those of you who watch my videos and who kindly comment, and who, frankly, make the act of making the videos not only easier, but also more enjoyable, and my content wouldn't be nearly as good if I didn't have all of you to interact with, because otherwise I'm simply just talking to myself. And while it's, you can talk to yourself and have people listen to it, it's not the same unless it's actually an exchange of ideas and thoughts and opinions and whatnot. So the alternative would essentially be that, I simply just release the Bloodborne Let's Talk Lore videos, and that's about it. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is that YouTube Gaming launched recently, or is in the process of launching at the time of recording, and I did some research and found that with the new PlayStation 4 firmware update that's on its way, I believe it's version 3, they're apparently planning to integrate YouTube into the PlayStation 4 native streaming service. So that would mean that when streaming via the PS4, I wouldn't have to stream through Twitch. I could just stream through YouTube, and you wouldn't have to worry about going to Twitch and following me there. You could just, if you're online, and I likely wouldn't be able to schedule times for streaming. It would just be whenever I have some spare time and I feel like just going online and playing and interacting with each of you, then I would go online. So I guess I just wanted to see what each of you thought about that, because the quality, I guess, of the audio and the video won't be commensurate to this series. It won't be anywhere even close, because for starters, I believe the maximum streaming quality is something like 720p, and I won't be able to do what I do for all of my Let's Play content, and that is constantly adjust the sound balance between the commentary and what's happening in the game. So, the audio-visual experience won't be nearly as high quality as it is in the context of these episodes, but the interaction will be a little bit more immediate, and you'll be able to, I guess, see more of me and interact, or hear more of me, I guess, but potentially see more of me. But I would have to get the PlayStation camera, and I believe those are about $60. I'm not sure I have the money for that right now, but maybe if that's something that people want, then maybe I'll sniff out a deal or something like that. Certainly there are some issues with the PlayStation 4 native streaming thing. It's not great. In order to have the comments on screen, for instance, you need to kind of play in a smaller window, and the spot where the face cam would be is taken up by a icon that is, frankly, you can choose from something like 100 avatars, and they all suck. So you would be looking at like a sword and a shield, or I think I have a bell there as kind of a reference to the resonant bell in Bloodborne. But yeah, all this is to say, just basically leave a comment, let me know what you think about that. It won't be, you can't expect that I'll have 8 and 16-bit music overlaid on top. There won't be any fast forwarding. There won't be any rebalancing of audio. So it'll just be for fun live streams. Maybe I'll go on Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, and invade people with my Maldron the Assassin build, or just go on Bloodborne, help people in the Chalice dungeons, or just grind Chalice dungeons. Maybe try speedruns. I've never been particularly good at speedruns. I can do certain speedrun strategies or tactics, but yeah, very interested to hear what each of you think about that, and whether or not that's something that you would be interested in watching. The next thing is, I've gotten a few private messages from people asking whether or not they can add me to either PlayStation Network or Xbox Live. And yes, absolutely you can, but again, with the caveat that my spare time is limited, and beyond the time I spend farming and grinding for the purposes of not having to do that on camera for my various playthroughs and content and stuff like that, and playing occasionally with my brothers and my best friend, I generally don't have any more time to play, so you can feel free to add me, but as long as you're not offended if I'm never able to, respond to your invites or anything like that. So yeah, on Xbox Live, it's just Aegon of Astora, with spaces, so Aegon space of space Astora, and then on PSN, it's the same thing, but with underscores instead of spaces. So just so, no one feels as though I'm ignoring them or anything like that, I was just trying to think about how to respond to those in a way that, you understand that I'm not just being antisocial, I'm not just being a dick, it's just I don't really have the time to play with other, people beyond my very small circle of friends and family. But yeah, all that stuff aside, next thing we have on our list is we need to head to Anor Londo. And I mentioned we were going to do this either in the previous episode or the episode prior to that, but better late than never. Hello. Before we talk to her, recall that when we first arrived here, she said that if we are to be the chosen one, then a revelation will visit. She said, a revelation will visit thee.
So you have received a revelation. Very auspicious. I hope for the best. I pray that through you, her wish will be granted. Have you heard of Seath the Scaleless? In legend, he turned against the ancient dragons. He became Lord Gwyn's confidant, was granted dukedom, and was allowed to pursue his research. At the Regal Archives, he immersed himself in research on scales of immortality, the one thing that he did not have. But his very research drove him mad. The Archives became a dungeon, a place for sinister experiments. Now, nobody dares even approach the Duke's forbidden archives. It looms over this land high atop the mountain. But I should warn against even an approach. If you require rest,
So very, very interesting. She says that, she hopes that Guinevere's wishes come true. And we can see, just as she said, there's the Duke's Archives, high atop the mountain. So segregated in many ways from the rest of Anor Londo. Presumably to, hide the secrets, the things that are going on there. Although, I guess Seath and his minions haven't done a particularly good job of that if the Dark Moon Nidus is aware of Seath and the, morally questionable practices that he's engaging in his archives. You'll recall that in the cutscene after we place the Lord Vessel, that this archway here was once, why can't I think of words today? It was once blocked by a golden fog gate, but that once we placed the Lord Vessel, this was one of the 3 entranceways to open up. So what does this message say? Be wary of tough enemy. Sure. So unlike the armored boars or fang boars, I can't recall exactly what they're called, unlike the one in the Undead Parish, you cannot backstab this one. Because it actually has a metal plate over the tiny spot in its hitbox where you were once able to backstab it. So, because screw these guys, I don't enjoy fighting them, you can just poison them. and it can't do a damn thing about it. So while we're waiting for this boar to die, we got a couple of comments from that gunslinger, who wrote, "You rant about neoliberalism, yet refuse to help Schreier in his son-finding career. What is he supposed to do? Get good? You're part of the problem, Aegon." I laughed pretty hard when I first read that. So, I swear I had a justification for it, but I couldn't remember what it was when I was describing that. And so if you go back and you watch that one, you'll hear me pause a fair bit as I'm trying to explain why I decided what I did. And the reason for that is simply that I was thinking in my head, I had some reason other than just it's more dramatic to, you know, not quote unquote save him. And the reason is this. Hidetaka Miyazaki did a interview on Japanese radio, and there is a translation online, the link to which will be in the description. And it's not, as the person who translated it, him or herself, said that it's not a perfect translation. So there may be some ambiguity here, but this is the line from the translated interview that I'm using, I guess, as my justification for wanting to not join the Daughter of Chaos Covenant and not offer 30 humanity so that we can get there first and kill the Sunlight Maggot so that it doesn't attach itself to him. So Hidetaka Miyazaki said, as for Schreier, I think the happiest ending for him is to die by becoming the sun. He is happy he found his son. So, from the perspective of Miyazaki, his happiest ending is the one that we're going to, which is arguably actually the sad ending, but according to Miyazaki, and yeah, I know Miyazaki's he has a pretty dark mind at times, but that's the happy ending, according to him. So that's what we're gonna go with. Just die already. It's gonna be another Fang boar helm. Ugh. Let's do this. Don't want that at all, even in my inventory. That gunslinger left another comment, which I will get to in a second, after I show what you can do with this fella up here. Well, there are a number of ways you can deal with him, but we're going to do two at once. How about that? So first is we're going to use Poison Mist here. Though I don't know if we're close enough. Oh yeah. And then the other way is doing this. The gestures, of course, are optional. And I'm surprised that he didn't hit me, because some of the gestures do actually move you forward a little bit. But yeah, I just find it tedious to fight these guys. I don't know what they're weak against. I would assume maybe blunt damage, or maybe it's bleed damage. Let's try that out. Although that's still slashing, isn't it? Yeah, slash thrust, and this is regular slash thrust. Nope. Pretty resistant against that as well. Maybe it's thrusting damage, although we tried that, I believe. Oh, this is actually the weapon we were supposed to be using. We're supposed to be using the Crystal Halberd. I almost completely forgot about that. And then when we get the Crystal Ember from here, and I'm not sure if we're actually going to do the entirety of Duke's Archives this time. Excuse me, I really shouldn't drink Red Bull before recording, because then it gives me gas, then I burp, and then, like in the previous episode, I forget to edit it out. But yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to do the entirety of the Duke's Archives in this episode, but we shall see. Because I do want to do the DLC as soon as possible, because there is a weapon I want to get from there, and it's one of the best areas in the game, so I tend to like to do that as early as possible, while still being, like, we're level 90, so we could, at this point, pretty much go through the rest of the game, and we'd probably be fine. But yeah, as we're waiting for this stupid thing, actually we'll just finish him off. I want to pick it up, but I know it's just another Fang boar helm. No! It's so ugly, get it away from me. So the huge pain in the ass to this place. Another thing we did, we upgraded our Wanderer set. Not the helmet, but everything else to all the pieces to +9. Or actually the coat to +6, but the boots and the gauntlets to +9. So then that way, if we need to add on a few extra pounds, we can just swap out either the gauntlets or the leggings for the Wanderer set. And it looks still pretty good. We lose a little bit of poise, but that's fine. This bonfire is not a warpable bonfire, but we are going to sit at it anyway. And what was I just saying? Probably should have also eaten before starting to record, because now my stomach's grumbling. Gonna have to edit out so much of the audio. Okay, this place, or at least this first bit, is an enormous pain in the rear. Although, oh, that damage. How much damage are we doing? 505. Oh, that's wonderful. But yeah, this place, at least for me, is generally an enormous pain to deal with, just because there's so many enemies, and then you have to deal with the channelers, buffing them constantly. And I don't believe these guys can be poisoned. The channelers can, of course, be poisoned. But I am very much liking the halberd. And these guys have magnetized arrows, of course. And when they're buffed by the channeler, you can see the buff effect there. But when they're buffed by the channeler, you do not want to get hit by them. We are going to talk a lot about the Duke's Archives, and that's why I'm hesitant about continuing on with the area right now. As with many of the other enemies in the game, if you headshot this guy and you time the arrows just right, you can keep them infinitely stunned until they die. And I believe probably more than any enemy in the game, I've killed the channelers in the Duke's Archives more than any other enemy. And the reason for that is that in order to get the Dark Soul, you've got all of the achievement in this game, you need a Channeler's Trident. And I had a Channeler's Trident on one of my builds, but unfortunately it was not the build with which I had accumulated all the other rare equipment. I did it backwards. We're supposed to kill the gold golem first, and then get the broken pendant. I actually went to Darkroot Basin before we started recording, and went to look just out of curiosity. I'm like, is the gold golem there? Yeah, the gold golem was there. And then I homeward boned back, and yep. So that sucks. One thing I do want to try and do when we come back here is I do want to try and do the Duke skip. I will still do the whole level, but I've never been able to do the Duke skip. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I suppose you could just do a search for it on YouTube. But yeah, you could also just wait until we get around to doing that. But we have to go rescue Dusk so that we can get our hands on the broken pendant. So there it is, the golden crystal golem. The golems, of course, seem to be closely associated with Seath the Scaleless. Which, of course, begs the question of why the heck, and I guess Seath, for whatever reason, was kidnapping maidens to use in his experiments. But why... I guess why, in general, are all of those golems over there, when the only other place you find them, as far as I can recall, is in the Duke's Archives and the Crystal Caves? And why is this one here? It's very strange.
So, 'tis thou who rescueth me. Most gracious, I am deeply obliged. I am Dusk of Oolacile. I cometh from an age long before thine. I cannot stay here for long. So, before I disappear, allow me to ask one thing. My home, Oolacile, is the home of ancient sorceries. My hope is to pass this profound knowledge to thee, with thine approval. Would this be of assistance to thee? My heartfelt thanks. I am pleased beyond words. Then I shout, engrave my signature. If thou art in need, pray summon me from my signature. It seems that my time is done. May the great flames guide thee.
So in returning to Jerks Without Borders comment from that we discussed either in the last episode, yeah, it was in the last episode, where one of the examples of the kind of time is convoluted corpse placement was Dusk of Oolacile. And I mentioned that you need to satisfy a series of events, or a series of things have to happen before her corpse shows up. And note that there's no corpse here. This is where we will eventually find it, after we get our hands on the broken pendant. I don't believe it's necessary to summon her in order to do that. And note once again that I'm using the one-handed, two-handed trick to move more quickly through, although we do have the rusted iron ring, so probably would have been easier to just swap that out instead of doing that. But yeah, so in some cases, perhaps time is convoluted, but that explanation, it's hard for that to hold water for me when it's so inconsistent, seemingly, because there are some NPCs for whom you need to actually do things before you find their corpse, and others where, yeah. So I don't know. And thankfully we don't need to reload the area. Her sign is right here. Which, pretty cool. I really do like this whole... Because this area, where we are now, although I don't know specifically, I think this is where we fight Calamite. We might have to do some side-by-side comparisons later. Although that can be really hard to do because you need to be facing the exact same direction, looking at the same thing. But I'll see if I can possibly do that. Because I know that when you go to fight Calamite, there is a waterfall, if I recall correctly. So yeah.
I am Dusk of Oolacile. It is an honor to see thee again. I shall follow thine wishes. For a very long time, I was trapped within the crystal golem. From my home I was taken and banished to a plane of distortion. It was there that thou came to my rescue, long after I had relinquished all hope. So gleeful was I. My faith reneweth. The sorceries of Oolacile differ from the magic of thine age. It is difficult to explain. Oolacile's sorceries are, what doth one say? They're somewhat of an approximation. Thine sorceries are more straightforward, negating all but thyself. Dost thou not find some fascination in these discrepancies?
I do indeed. Something else to note that I meant to mention the first time we spoke with her is that you may recall when we first spoke with Alvina of the Darkroot, the leader of the Cat Covenant of the Force Hunters, that I remarked on her rather archaic tongue. The fact that she, whereas the NPCs throughout the game use, rather, essentially some approximation, to borrow a word from Dusk, approximation of, I guess, medieval language. And I'm not particularly knowledgeable of linguistics, so I welcome any corrections there or clarifications. But I did say that Alvina's speech was, very old-fashioned compared to everyone else in the game. And there's a clue that, Alvina is from the same time that Dusk is, based on the fact that, they both seemingly have the same dialect, I guess, is how you probably put it. So that's very interesting. Another thing she says is that she was trapped in that golem for a long time. And anytime I think about the time travel, I guess, subplots in both Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, I get caught up in these paradoxes in my mind. I can get very confused about it, but she says she was trapped in there for a long time. How does she even know? How does one measure time when you're traveling back and forth from one age, from the past to the future, and when you're stuck inside of a crystal golem? What is your, how does one even count time? Can time even be counted when it's so incredibly distorted in that manner? Don't know. No idea.
The sorceries, thine, does that...
I do find, once again. You already asked me that. Okay, so we are going to pick up everything that she has. Hidden body, cast light, repair, sure once, 10,000 souls. I believe that anything you don't purchase from her, you can get from Elizabeth. So let's leave, because you need to have it attuned, so you waste an attunement slot. We're going to leave that and see if I'm right about that, if I'm remembering that correctly. And if I am, then we'll have the option to buy that from Elizabeth. Definitely want Chameleon. And Hidden Weapon is another that I can take or leave. Essentially the equivalent to one of the rings that you get from Dark Souls 2 if you beat the game without without using a bonfire or dying. One of the two. One's for the left-handed weapon, one's for the right-handed weapon. That might be an idea for, live stream right there. Me trying to do a deathless or a bonfire-less run in Scholar of the First Sin. Because that's something I've still never done. I tried doing it in New Game Plus 6 and New Game Plus 7. Failed both times. And yeah, so maybe that's something. I don't know, you guys let me know what you want me to do, or whether that's something that interests you. The one invader who invaded us in the depths earlier in the playthrough, the person doing the Silver Knight or Black Knight cosplay, dropped a Oolacile Ivory Catalyst for us, and so we already have it, don't need to buy it. Sorcery Catalyst of the Lost Land of Oolacile, formed by enchanted white bark branches. The white bark boosts sorcery adjustment, but the sorceries of this lost land are gentle and not affected by intelligence.
If thou art in need, pray summon me again. I only wish to be of some genuine assistance. May the flames guide thee.
May the flames guide thee as well. Alright, now finally to go back and get the broken pendant. So before we head back up the elevator, I want to read the comment that I meant to get to like 25 minutes ago. I may have started reading it out, but it's also from That Gunslinger. I think I have similar feelings about Destiny as you do. I was a fan of Bungie since 2001, and it's been absolutely tragic to see them be torn apart over the last 2 years. I played Destiny for about 2 months as well, until I decided I'd seen enough, and a parenthetical remark that, well, I'd seen what little there was after a few days. After Joe Staten left, and I believe Joe Staten was the person in charge of the story, and Marty was fired, and Marty, is it McDonnell? The person, responsible for the iconic Halo themes. And after Marty was fired, I wasn't too optimistic, but I needed to know for sure. It's pretty obvious this is mostly Activision's fault, but I find it very uncomfortable that someone like Jason Jones seems fine with what Bungie has become. What Microsoft is doing to Halo is sickening too. I really don't know which is worse. I'd give anything to have Bungie back to how they were in 2007. Were it so easy. And I absolutely love that last line, because I believe, if I recall correctly, that's a reference to what the Arbiter said, either in Halo 2 or 3 or both. Were it so easy. So, this is something that I've seen Dima Parachute joke about once or twice, where with seemingly every comment I bring up and discuss, I always agree, but then disagree. So I agree, in some fundamental way, but then I disagree or kind of just problematize the comment in some way, shape, or form. I don't mean that to be, I guess, personal or whatever. And again, that's probably just a occupational hazard. It's my job to split hairs, essentially. But also because, if we all agreed with each other, then it'd be pretty damn, there wouldn't really be a whole lot of reason to discuss these things. We didn't put our ring back on. So in this case too, as you can imagine, there's something in the comment that I want to discuss, not, in a see, thanks to our plus 10 armor, that didn't do more damage than, how much was that? Yeah, almost half our HP, so you don't want to mess with them when they're buffed. But the part that I would disagree with, and I see this a lot with people discussing the issues with Destiny. And that is people wanting to absolve Bungie, consciously or otherwise, to absolve Bungie of responsibility for, the kind of sad state of affairs and the, colossal disappointment that the game is to me, to That Gunslinger, and to, many, many others. And I completely understand that, that mindset and wanting to do that, but yeah, I can't say I agree with it. And the reason is simply that I don't believe that you can separate the two companies in that way. I don't believe you can say, you know, Activision forced Bungie to do this, or that, you know, Bungie, like, they, given the fact that they signed this contract, I believe for 10 years or something like that, Bungie is a big enough company, and, you know, a wealthy enough company, a notable enough company, a game designer, but they behave more just like a company these days rather than a, you know, incorporated game design place. But they entered into the contract with Activision willingly, knowing exactly what Activision's reputation was, knowing that, you know, Activision is the publisher that turned Call of Duty into a yearly kind of Madden or sports game-esque franchise where they release a new game every year, and in between releases they do their best to push DLC so that they have a constant revenue stream coming in. And that's their prerogative. As a public company, that's their prerogative. But where I depart significantly from, you know, just saying, you know, that's their job, is the obscurantism, the misleading of people and of investors. And that's related, again, very much to all the things that I discussed in my 9 or 10 minute long rant in the previous episode, to neoliberalism and the rise of public relations. And this is something I studied a fair bit during my undergrad degree. Kind of the class was called accounting theory, but it was mostly behavioral finance type stuff and understanding how the stock market works and how stock prices react to, you know, how they change based on the news, what things are said. And if you look at the press releases that Bungie issues, any of them that have to do with Destiny, they never use the same metrics. Recall that with, and I know it seems almost like I'm arguing with myself here, but that is kind of what I'm doing, but it will make sense in a little bit. But recall that with pretty much every Halo game that Bungie ever made, there was usually an API that was released to the public that permitted the community to actually see how many people were playing the game at any one time. Fast forward to Bungie with Destiny, and Bungie in partnership, not necessarily under, but in partnership with Activision. And any press release you see that talks about how many people are playing Destiny, they never use the same metrics. It's always X number of people have, you know, logged into Destiny, or X number of people have played Destiny. It never says this is how many active players there are. It never clarifies whether they're referring. So if they say, you know, 10,000 people played Destiny today or something like that, they never say, or you know, 10,000 players. They never specify whether that's each gamer tag or whether if someone uses all three of their build slots, which is something that if you played Destiny, you almost certainly, it's something you had to do in order to actually get the materials you needed to upgrade and stuff. It never specified whether it counts each person 3 times. And there are some people with multiple gamer tags and stuff like that. And there are a whole bunch of people that, like myself and like that gunslinger, who who started playing the game, and then just when they realized it wasn't a Bungie game like we knew Bungie games in the past, they decided, you know what, this sucks, I'm out. And they only release the information that will make the game look good, that has the opportunity to bolster. The correct term is to maximize shareholder value. So I just don't understand Bungie, because they got out from under Microsoft for very understandable reasons. They didn't want to be a developer that turned into that. And then they went and willingly signed a contract. And presumably, for a company that large, for a company that went through that much trouble to get out from under Microsoft so they could go off and do their own things. To jump from what's the phrase, to out of the pot or out of the kettle and into the frying pan or something like that. They jumped right into another situation that was the exact same, if not worse, in terms of their creative ability being stifled by profit motive. I want to see if you can poison mimics. I'm not sure if you can, but let's try that again. He's probably... Oh no. Oh. Cool. I think we discovered another way to kill mimics. Although that's going to take forever if you look at that life bar. Crystal Night Shield. I believe this is just the same as the Night Shield, but it's in crystal form. Oh. While farming, I also picked up all of these Dark Hands, and I purposely didn't put any of them in my item box, just so that I would remember to read the description, and I haven't remembered to do that. So let's leave that for now. Because we have a topic of conversation that I've not yet wrapped up, and we're running short on time. The medium metal shield is elegantly carved and painted. Although it is thought to have been used by ancient knights of the nobility, its defense capabilities are similar to other shields. I want to compare that to the normal knight shield and see what the point would be of converting a shield to crystal. Because I'm not sure if there is much of a point in doing so. Yeah, we're not, at least for now, we're not going to try and do the Duke skip. We may try and do it next time, but just because we're running so short on time. Let me finish my train of thought. So, Bungie is a big enough company. Bungie is filled with adults who, have lots of experience. And I suspect that's why, much of the team fell apart. Because they didn't do what they set out seemingly to do when they split from Microsoft. They split from Microsoft because they wanted to make games they wanted to make. But then they wound up in what I perceive to be an equally as bad, if not worse, situation where, they're partnered with Activision, a company that is notorious for not only misleading the public, but also misleading its gamers, misleading its customers. I don't like using the word consumers or customers, but there you have it. And so I understand the inclination to want to assign blame to Activision because it's Activision, and given everything that they've done and, horribly unethical business practices. But I think Bungie is equally to blame. They should have known, they ought to have known who it was that they were getting in bed with. There's, in my opinion, almost no way that they didn't know. If you look at the contract, it was very clear about a number of things. And yeah, so that's just, I guess, my kind of sad 2 cents. That Bungie is, by virtue of their being partnered with a public company like Activision, their actions are essentially at the mercy of, quote unquote, the market. Something that is very much a social construct that is very much controlled by a select few elite people, but that is very much perceived as, an invisible hand that actually, balances supply and demand and things like that. But whole other can of worms there that I probably shouldn't get into when my recording's over an hour. But yeah, that's kind of my disagreement, I guess, with your comment. I very much appreciate your comment, that Gunslinger, and I understand, once again, the inclination to not want to blame Bungie, but I think that Bungie is equally to blame for everything that's happened. We've already read the description for that, so we're not going to bother, but we are going to end it here. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.